Hi everyone. So the last couple of days I started talking about the skandhas, about form and feeling. And today I'm going to talk a bit about perception, samnya, which is sometimes called discriminations. Discrimination. So what's the purpose anyway of talking about these skandhas? That's probably a good place to start. Well, really, because it's through our belief in ourselves uh, that we create suffering for ourselves, because we see ourselves as somewhat fixed and enduring. And so the skandhas help us to look more deeply in how we build up that sense of self. What is it exactly that happens? So, as I've said before, these skandhas, they're not things, they're not entities. They're a process, you could call them a process that explains how we create something solid out of something that's empty. So, yes, once we've got our senses, we make contact with the world, and those senses are form. Everything around us has a form. And we have feelings of like and dislike or disinterest, which we could say is the neutral aspect. But then we start making an identification of what it is we're seeing, of what it is that our senses are coming into contact with. So I thought I'd read you a little bit of Bhante from Wisdom Beyond Words. And he quotes a bit from the Heart Sutra, not the one that we chant in the within the puja. There are various versions. There are many, many translations of the Heart Sutra. This bit says, for Subhuti. So Avalokiteshvara is giving a teaching to Subhuti. For Subhuti, the Bodhisattva, the great being, should give gifts in such a way that he is not supported by the notion of a sign. Then Sangharakshita says, notion is a translation of samnya, which is one of the 5 skandhas, and means in that context something more like recognition. Suppose, for instance, you were to perceive in the distance something green and of a certain recognizable shape and size, so that you were able to identify it on the basis of your previous perceptual experience as a tree. That is samnya, not simply perception, but rather the identification of the perception as a perception of a particular item. Of course, the actual process of perception and recognition is usually so swift as to make it impossible to distinguish between the purely perceptual element and the element of recognition. But moments of ambiguity do occur, especially in unfamiliar surroundings or light conditions. So you're probably all familiar with the example of somebody coming into a dark room and seeing a snake on the floor, and immediately, dislike, fear arises. And then you put on the light and you see it was merely a rope on the floor in a particular shape that looked like a snake. So obviously memory comes into samnya, or recognition, or cognition, or discrimination. There's lots of words that we can use for it. So yes, from our earliest days we are creating memories or concepts and building, if you like, a sense of the world around us, and a sense of the world that is built up of form and feeling and discrimination, and there'll be further to go. We'll leave that till tomorrow, but even those 3 have created already a sense of our world that we are monitoring, you could say, and judging. And those judgments create our personality to some extent, because it's our view, it's the way that we are building up a view from our past experience, from our conditioning, creating memories, and creating, well, not just concepts of objects, but concepts also about how we do things, how to drive a car, how to cook a meal. So it's very useful for us to have these concepts and clusters of concepts as to how to do things. Otherwise, everything would take us a very long time. We'd be starting from the beginning all the time. But of course, they then become habitual, and it's the habit, it's the automatic quality that then trips us up, because then we start taking so much for granted, and we make assumptions based on our past perceptions and our past feelings. And those assumptions, if you like, create barriers. And those barriers mean that we don't see things with fresh eyes. And that means that we don't allow we don't allow the truth that everything is in a state of flux. We don't allow things necessarily to be different in ways that it would be healthy to see things as different. So we get views, we create views. Even our memories are not necessarily to be relied on. So every time we have a memory, the memory gets transformed in some way by the present. So although we think we have a direct memory, what we have is a memory of a memory of a memory of a memory, because we've probably memorized an event, even an object, so many times that it's got altered, you could say, in over time, in the remembering. So we're not as reliable, basically, as we think we are. We think we're very reliable. We think that we have a view, an image of reality that we, through practice, we realise, through meditation, through really looking at how our mind works, we realise is not reality at all. It's a very limited perception, and it's a perception that we have built up, we have created. We've created a story about ourselves and about what we know, but we think that it's a documentary rather than a story. In other words, that it's got some truth, that it's got some validity that it doesn't particularly have. So I think I'll leave it there for today. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.